There was a wild article that came out the other day making Julio Rodriguez available for a trade. Now, although that may not be realistic, the generational superstar, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that he's there to stay in Seattle. But there are a couple of more trade proposals that we want to break down in this video that may happen at the deadline for the Jays, so stay tuned for what's coming up next. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and we're taking this holiday in Canada to bring you some news video about a wild trade proposal from this makeshift article that we read the other day. It's about Julio Rodriguez, the generational superstar. Apparently, he's up for grabs from the Mariners, and although we don't think that's entirely possible, we do have a couple of more trades that we want to react to in this video that the Jays might be exploring around the All-Star break there.
Yeah, we saw it on Twitter, and a few people were actually talking about it. The tweet gained some traction. But before we do get into that, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're 30 away from 7,000, so that would mean the world. And let's get into it. Crazy Mariners trade article, and we'll touch on this one before we go into some more realistic ones that me and Peter made. But this was the headline of the article: Julio Rodriguez trade destinations, top 3 landing spots for the slumping Seattle Mariners star. And we were going to include the actual screenshot, but it was so bad that we're just not even going to bother including it. And the Jays were named as one of them. And essentially the premise was they called George Springer our center fielder, which is also not the case, and said how he was slumping so far throughout the season and how, the Mariners and the Blue Jays have made trades in the past. So maybe this could work if they trade one of their young stars. And I do have a makeup trade proposal based on what their article was saying. But Peter, I'll let you quickly touch on if you think this would ever happen, and especially happen right now. I think there's less than a 0% chance that happens, at least this season.
Yeah. Last offseason, the Mariners signed Julio to what, a 14-year extension? If I'm not 12 to 14-year extension. So let me get this straight. Not only was he top 10 in MVP voting last year, you now want to trade him this year because he's had a rough 45-game start to his season. Now, is he generational? That's up for debate. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Some people might think he is, some people might think he isn't. But I tend to think that he is. I think he's that good. He's going to be a great player in Major League Baseball for a long time. So why would the Mariners go out there and trade him when his value is at its lowest right now, as opposed to maybe a few years down the line when they aren't competing anymore or something like that? So it doesn't make any sense. I think he's one of the 5 most valuable players in all of baseball when it comes to trade value and contract situation and all that. So you'd have to give up a lot more just to go out there and get him, and that makes your team worse. Yes, you're getting a top player in the game, but you're also gutting your entire franchise. So it doesn't make sense, especially for 2 teams that want to win right now in the Jays and Mariners.
Yeah, and again, I'll pop it up for you. You can go have a read. It's by Adrian Dorney, and essentially, I don't know what the other 2 teams were, but the Jays were named as one of them, and one of their key pieces they discussed was how we'd had to include, obviously, our top prospects and a young starter. Now, whether that is, a major league, pitcher or hitter, we're unsure, but I tried to make something, happen in the trade machine, and it wasn't even, feasible for what the Blue Jays have. Rodriguez's trade value, according to the trade machine, it's obviously not perfect, is 276, and then you can see here that I put in our 2 best prospects in Tiedemann and Barriera, and Alek Manoah, whose value has dropped a little bit, I'm assuming, throughout this start of the year. But for one, I don't even know if the Blue Jays would. I don't think the Mariners would accept this deal. Maybe the Blue Jays would, but I know for a fact that the Mariners would not accept this. But realistically, there was no trade proposal that would work right now for the Blue Jays and Mariners unless we're giving up Bo Bichette alongside Manoah, alongside Tiedemann and Barriera.
But that's such a lateral move. Like, why would you even entertain that if you're the Blue Jays? You're giving up 3 of your best players, and then you're getting 1 player in return. So it just doesn't make sense. This is, it's obviously a clickbait type of article, and they wanted to get people to react to it. They wanted to get some traction on Twitter, and that's exactly what they did. But I think it's a safe bet to say that Julio Rodriguez is in Seattle for at least the next 5 years, and whatever happens after that, it's up in the air.
Yeah, and I agree, and pretty interesting and I'd say poor article. But we're going to use it as a talking point to discuss some other Blue Jays trade proposals centered around the outfield and 1 reliever as well, because, the center field spot for the Blue Jays is up in the air going forward with Kevin Kiermaier obviously on a 1-year deal. Springer, I don't think they put him back there. Of course, Dalton Varsho is seemingly our starting center fielder of the future, but he obviously hasn't had a great start. So let's get into it. We're going to whip out the trade machine, which has been a while since we ripped this out. You can hear the audio going there. But we have 2 trades for you today, and Peter, we'll start with yours here. And let us know what your thoughts are on this and who you think we can target. We'll have tons more of these towards the deadline, but we wanted to take today to, following this article to discuss it. And Peter, I'll let you discuss this one here. It's Addison Berger, Barriera, and Santiago Espinal for Blackburn and Rooker. And I'll let you describe now what your thoughts are on this.
Well, Brent Rooker has had an absolutely phenomenal start to his season in Oakland, and I don't know if the A's want to make him available for trade. He still has 4 years of service time left, 4 or 5 years, and he's had his breakout season thus far with the Oakland A's. So he would be a welcomed addition to many contending teams, especially with the trade deadline market not being as loaded as it was last season. Brent Rooker can be a valuable contributor to the Yankees, to a lot of teams that are in need of lineup help. And if you've been watching the Jays over the past couple of weeks, I think it's safe to say that they are in need of some help 1 through 9. And Brent Rooker's got, I think, 10 home runs on the season, 30-something plus RBIs. He's hitting over 300. He's walking at a very high rate. So it seems to be something that is sustainable. If you look at his StatCast numbers, his max exit velocities are up off the charts. His walk rate is off the charts. And all the peripherals look good. It seems to be that he is here to stay, and he is here to be a valuable contributor for a long time, for years to come. Now, I don't know about that, but Paul Blackburn was also an all-star last year. Take that as you may. He had a 4-something ERA. Wasn't dominant by any stretch, but it's some more starting pitching depth for the Toronto Blue Jays. And if you're the Oakland A's, I mean, right now you have Nick Allen starting at shortstop, who seems like a good guy, but he's hitting under 100 right now and has no extra base hits on the season. You're replacing him with Addison Berger, who could be your shortstop of the future. You got him for 6 years. You're getting Santiago Espinal, who can contribute as opposed to Tony Kemp. And I think it's Yosver Zulueta. Was that the other one that I... Barriera, and there you go. So that fits your timeline if you're the Oakland A's. So yeah, it makes sense to me as a trade destination.
Yeah, I like it, and obviously maybe Espinal could get a spark with some more playing time. A little bit of an overpay for the Jays according to this thing, and I could see it, but again, it'd be more of a win-now move because Barriera is not going to contribute for a few years. Addison Berger,
right.
He'd be the biggest piece in this. As you can see, his trade value is higher than Rooker's, so clearly this, machine values him a lot. But overall, let us know what your thoughts are on that as we move on to the second one now, which is one that I made, and this one is hard to do. We're going to be targeting Liam Hendriks today. We're going to do a Scott Barlow type deal, but I think a Liam Hendriks reunion might be a bit more realistic. And obviously he's coming off of not playing much. He's gotten better, which is great, but his value is still low here. Bonilla and Espinal. Peter, I don't know what your thoughts are on this. Again, his value is super low, but because who knows how he really recovers and pitches in the major leagues. But he seems pretty good in the minors in his rehab stint there. I don't know what your thoughts are on this. It's very hard to evaluate Liam Hendriks' value right now.
Yeah, it is very hard to do that. He's also making a ton of money, which is not easy to
that's
gauge
why it's
on the
so
trade market. Yeah, exactly. And the White Sox have been playing better baseball as of late, but I still don't believe in them to be a playoff team or even do any damage if they manage to get into the playoffs. So I think it's going to be a complete fire sale. Emmanuel Bonilla is one of the top prospects in Jays land, and he's only 17 years old. He's got a lot of potential, and he has potential to stick in center field as well. He can play all 3 outfield positions, a true 5-tool player. So that would be the centerpiece of this trade that the White Sox are getting back. And I've heard some rumblings that they might explore a Luis Robert trade at the deadline. So maybe they're looking for their center fielder of the future, and maybe Manuel Bonilla is that guy for a pretty darn good reliever in Liam Hendriks. That would be a great ad for the Toronto Blue Jays. Is it realistic? It might be, because they might fall out of it by the deadline, and they might want to do a complete fire sale. So I don't see why not.
Yeah, I think this one could have the the possibility to happen. I don't know if it'd be centered around Bonilla. Who knows? I think he's, maybe a realistic option because he's obviously really, really far away. The furthest away prospect the Blue Jays have in exchange for, someone who could help us win right now. And then obviously after the trade deadline, having Chad Green and Liam Hendriks would help bolster the bullpen. But overall, let us know what your thoughts are on that one. And again, Liam Hendriks makes so much money that his value is pretty low. But I'm not sure the Blue Jays care too much about that right now with the way their team is going. But anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up here?
I just hopefully the Jays can go out there and get a win tonight. I mean, we're going to see you for the post-game video. We're going to maybe see you for the pre-game stream as well, but it's been a rough stretch in Jays land, but let's not lose hope. There's still a few games over 500. They were one game over 500 last year in May. So it's not all bad. They don't look great right now, but I do think they'll turn the corner, and hopefully they can make some additions at the deadline that'll push them over the top.
Yeah, hopefully they win in the drop, and thank you guys for watching. See you tomorrow. Today.
Thanks.